Okay, we're live. Welcome back to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Nolan. I'm here with Desiree. Hello, Desiree.
Hi.
This is episode 131, and we have a wonderful interview with someone named Scott coming up. So Scott quit Kratom after 10 years of use, and congratulations to him. He's been off for 6 months, so it's going to be a great interview with him. Before we get into our conversation with Scott, Desiree and I just quickly wanted to talk about how we feel different before and after using, and specifically just the little things that you begin to notice when you decide to quit. So, whether that be being more present in nature, noticing the little things, everything's a bit more beautiful. So, Desiree, if you want to get started with that.
I've always been a huge nature lover. So when I had first got sober in the beginning, I remember, I think I was like a week sober, and I had went to the beach and I was afraid that it was going to be different. I spend almost like every chance I get at the beach. So I was afraid it was going to be different. I went and it was the most amazing experience, like watching the sunset, having conversations with my friends, like it was just a genuine present moment that I was just truly enjoying the sunset and nature and the beach. And it was such a totally different experience than the whole time that I was on Kratom going to the beach, right? Like I thought I was enjoying that, and which may slightly have been, but this was a totally different experience. And that's the most change that I have seen now. What about you?
Great. And did you think that it was everything? Like you're more present with the people you're with, you're enjoying their company more, you're more attuned to just the natural beauty of things, or?
I think it's like a combination, right? Like the people I'm surrounded by, the nature, and just everything being outdoors. It was like everything just felt so much better.
I can relate to that too. I have a similar experience when we decide to quit. And I know this has been true for a lot of people, but I think that we become more attuned to detail, especially when it comes to nature. I think we open ourselves up a little bit because while we've been using, to me at least, it felt like there was a bit of a blur effect. It's like your vision's not quite 20/20 when it comes to enjoying your walk in a nature preserve or spending time with your friends and family. It's like you're present, but you're not quite present. So I remember
Mhm.
when I quit, thank goodness, I was taking a walk near Central Park in Manhattan. And I love botany and flowers and trying to identify them. But I remember when I quit, I was taking a walk on a beautiful spring day and I was noticing those terrible smelling, I think they're called pear trees, but they bloom every spring with white flowers and they smell awful, but they were beautiful. And I remember never feeling that way about a flower before in my life, if that makes any sense. It just filled me with a special sense of presence and joy, which I'd never had while I was using. And I think that applied to a lot of things too. So I love nature and it made nature just 100% better.
Right? Like it all just becomes more clear and present.
Oh, it absolutely does. There's so many user reports online about how when people decide to quit, there's so many of their senses come back to life. People start smelling things again, and people notice that not only do they start smelling the amazing things like flowers, but they can also smell garbage, which obviously sometimes you have to have good to have bad. There is garbage in the
Right.
world, and you will smell it. Not only that, people cite that their vision becomes a little clearer. Maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know the science behind that, but at the end of the day, I can corroborate all of the things that these people are saying. And one thing that I know you didn't have quite maybe direct experience with that other people may have, and I myself did, is that music and the sensation of listening to music as a sense becomes heightened beyond anything that I'd experienced before. It's all my favorite songs, brought back waves of emotion. And that was so special.
I think that's amazing. I've heard that before.
Thank you for talking with me, Desiree. We will let you, lovely listeners, enjoy this interview coming up. I know we've got a great chat ahead. Everyone, please take advantage of the resources on this podcast and online. And whether or not you're a new quitter or someone who's been struggling with this for a while. Please stay strong and reach out to us if you would like to be considered as a guest on the podcast. We always love to have fresh faces. Thank you so much.
All right.
Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is Jacob, and this evening on the podcast, I'm here with Scott. How would you like to introduce yourself to our audience? Typically, things like your age, profession, location, family, anything you want to share.
Okay. Scott, 38-year-old male, work in the remodeling construction trade, live in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Puget Sound area. That's just a brief
Cool.
rundown.
It's nice up there. What do you like to do for fun?
I do play drums and guitar. I like rock music.
Yeah.
And I've been getting into kind of spending a lot of my free time researching religion recently. So I enjoy that. Just learning about different religions and what they believe and stuff, and getting into spirituality a little bit. So,
Cool. Nice. So let's talk about your experience with Kratom. Why don't you tell me a little bit about when you first encountered it and when you first ended up trying it?
I have an extensive background with using drugs and alcohol. And I first got introduced to Kratom by a friend after I got out of rehab in 2014. And that was kind of when it was still new and not many people had heard about it. And I had gone down to Southern Oregon to go to a inpatient program, and I graduated. And when I got out, I was living in the second phase part of the program where you live with like a group home kind of thing. And one of my friends gave me a bag of Kratom when we were at the river swimming and was like, "You got to try this stuff. It's all natural." And my mom told me about it, and she got it at the herb shop, and it gives you a nice buzz, but it's not addictive or harmful in any way and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, I had no idea what it was. Just some green powder in a little bag. They used to sell these little 5-gram bags of powder at the natural health food shop down there. And so I mixed it up with some orange juice and drank it. And I drank one 5-gram bag. And then probably half an hour later, I drank another 5-gram bag. And so I took 10 grams for
Oh,
my
wow.
first time. And then we went to a movie. It was like the new Ninja Turtles movie that came out in 2014. And I was sitting in the movie just like, I can't believe this stuff is legal. I felt like I was on a handful of Vicodin or something. And I was like, this is nuts. So I was hooked right from the beginning. Whenever I get into something, I really
Jump right in.
get into it hard.
Yeah.
So
So 2014, just for the storyline's sake, when is your Kratom abstinence date?
okay, so I wrote it down. It is October 11th, 2024.
Okay, October 11th, 2024. Wow, that's 10 years. That's quite a long time.
I used Kratom literally every single day for 10 years. Didn't take any breaks except for one month I was able to quit in 2022. And then I convinced myself I can have just one dose.
Fortunately, I think we all know how that story goes. Just to go back to your history of addiction before Kratom, how long did you have periods of sobriety, or were you just steady using and then got sober and then fell into Kratom?
It was
On and
on and off throughout the years. I started pretty early, like around 14, 15, with drinking and pot, which moved into psychedelics, which moved into pills, which moved into heroin.
Okay.
And I was pretty much from 15 through 30, I was just in and out of rehab programs. I went to my first inpatient when I was like 16. It was an adolescent center. And then I'd get out and I'd relapse. And then I would use until I got into trouble. And then I'd go back into rehab again and just played that out for
Okay.
years. I never really had any prolonged sobriety apart from being in inpatient.
Okay.
So I was one of the chronic relapsers. I just get out of rehab and just start using right away.
I've got a pretty extensive history myself, but it can be rough. I'm sorry you had to go through a lot of that. All right, so let's talk, we can get into the kratom specific now. So you basically, you found it, you felt the effects, you felt like you had taken a handful of Vicodin. How did your usage progress? And I'm curious if you found or you saw kratom at the beginning as a solution to your drug and alcohol problems of the past, or if you were using it in conjunction with other substances and how that went.
When I got out of that program, I just took kratom only until I left the group home and got out of the program. And then when I got my own place, I started drinking alcohol and taking kratom
Okay.
together because I thought that was a step up from what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm not doing heroin anymore, but I can drink and take this kratom stuff and be able to function just fine.
Okay.
And I kind of looked at the kratom in the beginning as like my own natural antidepressant because I had been taking antidepressants for years, and I found when I took the kratom, I didn't need anything else because in the beginning it was really put a pep in my
Yeah.
step. This is all I need. This is great. A natural antidepressant and energy booster all in one, and legal and not going to show up on a drug test, and just seemed like the perfect thing.
It really does, I think, for a lot of people with histories of addiction coupled with mental health and other problems, because at the beginning, at least, it can do and can help with all those things. But like anything else, it unfortunately has a dark side. All right. How did your usage kind of progress over that 10-year period? And were you always using powder? Did you move on to any of the other products? How did it go over
Yeah.
that length? That's a long time.
Powder was the only thing available until a few years ago
Yeah.
for me. Like I only really started seeing the extracts pop up a few years ago in my area. But so it was strictly powder up until about 2022. But I would mix like 5 to 8 grams and take that 5 times a day, just all day, every day kind of thing. I would just mix it up like it was water and drink it down.
I did that too when I used powder, but when I had to.
And at night, I would just mix up dose after dose of 5, 10 gram doses and just drink it until I got the wobbles, and then I'd go to bed and sleep it off. And in the beginning, it seemed like I could take as much as I want and wake up feeling okay. So I got this illusion like, oh, this is harmless. This is
Yeah.
fine. If I just take too much, all I have to do is just go lay down and sleep it off for a few hours and I feel fine. And so I got this illusion that it was this perfectly safe thing to do as much as I wanted kind of thing. And I was able to get away with that for a few years. Around 2022 or so, I started getting some pretty serious side effects all of a sudden. All of a sudden, I found I couldn't take as much as I want. I would make myself sick on a daily basis from taking so much. And I would have to pull my car over and take naps frequently to sleep the wobbles off. And my stomach started hurting. I started finding that I would get anxiety and all these pains and weird sensations through my body and that kind of thing. It got so bad to the point that I went to the doctor because I was getting vertigo and all
Yeah.
these things. And I just couldn't keep doing that. And so my plan was to quit. My plan always was to quit, but it never seemed to
Yeah.
happen. And I went to the doctor and told him, I want to quit kratom. This stuff, I can't stop taking this stuff and it's making me sick. And so he prescribed me a gabapentin and said, I actually asked for the gabapentin and he agreed to give it to me. but I didn't quit even then. I really wanted to, and I had the desire to, but I just couldn't do it.
Withdrawals are so bad, probably, and
Yeah.
after that long a time, your body's so dependent on it, I assume.
So what I did was I switched to extracts. I was like, oh, okay, the powder is making me sick, so let me try
Yeah.
this. It's like the powder, but it's in a more concentrated form. So
Switch the beer for
and
the vodka.
basically, so I started buying the extracts, and temporarily, I did feel better because I wasn't ingesting all that leaf material,
Yeah.
probably. And the extracts seemed to work for me. It gave me that buzz that I used to get from the powder without as much physical symptoms. And I used the extracts for the liquid extracts for a couple of years before I quit. And that's what I was using when I quit was the liquid
Okay.
extracts.
Cool. So 2022 all the way to October 2024, that's 2 years. Did you have any like periods of trying to quit, getting off for a few days, starting back up, or was it just did you taper?
Uh,
How'd you do it?
it's a kind of interesting story, but how I actually quit. But I really wanted to quit like every single day. I would wake up and say, maybe this is the day that I let
Yeah.
this thing go. And I would beat myself up every day because I would be like, you have to do this. This is not an option anymore. It's been years and you've wasted all this money and you're making yourself sick. And it's not FDA regulated, so you don't really know what you're putting in your body. It's got to stop. And every day I'd tell myself that in the morning, and probably by about noon, I'd always break down because as soon as I started feeling that withdrawal start to hit, I would say, I can just have one just to take the edge off. And then once you have one, the phenomenon, the craving hits in, and I can't control how much I take. By the end of the day, I'd always end up taking, towards the end, I was taking a couple of liquid extracts and about 4 or 5 of the kava kratom drinks
Oh wow.
a day,
That's quite a bit.
and trying to work and do a route. I was barely holding it together for those last couple of years. I really don't know how I was able to pull it off. But
What eventually happened that got you past the
yep.
point that you were able to finally quit? How'd you do it?
So, well, like I said, my doctor prescribed me gabapentin and clonidine to help with the withdrawals. And luckily, I had a really cool, understanding doctor. But what ended up happening was I had all the intention of quitting, but what ended up happening was I just started taking the gabapentin and the kratom together
Okay.
for a while. And I also started taking Phenibut.
Oh man,
I'm not
heard
sure you
about that.
know about that. I was taking Phenibut for a couple of years before I quit too. And all this stuff in my mind, in my addict mind, it was like, I'm going to take to help me quit
Yeah,
the kratom.
I've done that.
And I would try these things. It wasn't, I tried other things too. I don't need to get into, but like the gabapentin and the Phenibut, I tried using that to get off the kratom, but I just ended up taking both and getting addicted to both. And I ended up getting into a real problem with the Phenibut also. So, well, long story short, it was last fall, and in a last ditch effort to try and get off the kratom, because I was desperate. I was like, I just couldn't face it, the
Yeah.
withdrawal. I had been clean from hard drugs for 10 years since I started the kratom, pretty much, other than a couple of things here and there. But I ended up hitting the street and getting some speed. I was like, okay, this, if I take this or if I smoke this, then it'll lessen the withdrawals. That's another crazy addict kind of thinking. But what ended up happening was I ended up in the emergency room, and it was ugly.
Bad.
That was the slap in the face that I needed. And I was like, okay, this kratom addiction that started off as this harmless little thing is now about to kill you because you can't
Yeah.
stop it. And that was kind of what I needed. I feel like God let me go through that experience to give me the kick in the pants I needed to quit. And the timing was crazy because I had this trip to Tokyo planned. And right out when I got out of the hospital, it was only a couple days away. And so I was like, okay, you're either going to go back into inpatient or you're going to go on that trip and not take any kratom with you and just cold turkey it. And I've literally been through probably 8 different inpatient treatments. So I was like, I don't know if I need another one of those. I know I'm not going to die from the kratom withdrawals. It will be unpleasant, but I think I just need to bite the bullet and go cold turkey. So I got on that plane to Tokyo and just went over there
Damn.
and didn't bring any with me. And I tried to taper down a little bit before I went, but it didn't really work out. So I just cold turkeyed it on, I got off the plane. I was in Tokyo going through withdrawals and wandering around the city.
How
Yeah.
was how did
It was
the
fun.
how were the withdrawals? Did the being in a foreign place with a lot of external stimuli, because Tokyo is a very stimulating city with lots of lights and very large, obviously, and a whole completely different culture from the Puget Sound area. Did that help distract you? Was it living hell for a week, 2
Yeah.
weeks? What was it like?
It was definitely a distraction. I don't think I could have done it if I just laid in my bed at home for a week. I don't think I could have gotten through the withdrawals that way. I probably would have broken down. So just forcing myself to go to a place where it wasn't even an option, it took a lot of the mental anguish away in a way, because it's almost like you're just forced to let go of it. Once you get on that plane, it's just okay, it's not even an
Yeah, you
option.
can't
So
buy it. You can't
what
go
in it
anywhere unless you cut your trip short and come home, if you even have the money to be able to do that.
and so honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it was still very difficult. For the first couple of days, I basically just stayed in my hotel room and I didn't sleep. Obviously, I was horrible, restless legs, goosebumps all over my body, temperature fluctuations, cold, hot. The nights were the worst because during the day I could get out and walk around, even though I didn't have much energy. I would force myself to walk around, and even though I'd have to sit down, every now and then try and recuperate. Really didn't have much energy, didn't have an appetite. It reminded me exactly of heroin withdrawal.
Yeah.
It was almost exactly the same because I've been through that. But the nights were the worst, and I'm glad I at least had the clonidine and the gabapentin to
Oh,
help.
that's good. You still had something left to take with you. Yeah.
I made sure that I at least had the clonidine and gabapentin. But even with those, it was when you quit an opiate type drug like that, the adrenaline rebound is something. It prevented me from sleeping for about a week. Almost literally didn't get a wink of sleep for about a week. But it just goes to show you, you're stronger than you think you are. And I was able to survive it. And I made it back home. And when I got home, I was afraid that I would just run straight to the
Yeah.
smoke shop. But I prayed my ass off when I was over there because that was like the only thing I could do for a while. For the first couple of days was just pray. And my higher power has taken the obsession to use away from me for now. And I'm just really grateful.
That's great. That's crazy that most people don't quit drugs and decide to quit drugs by going to Japan. Kudos for you. Hopefully you got to enjoy some of the trip. And I feel you. I felt like my withdrawals from extracts were very similar to like strong opiates as well. And also the no sleep thing, the week I was a chronic relapser, so I've definitely been through that cycle all kinds of times, and it sucks every time. There's no other way to put it. But like you said, if you're listening to this out there, you're stronger than you think, and it sucks, but you can do it. I know I'm minimizing it, but because I'm on the other side of it, but it's doable. Just you just got to make a plan.
Yeah.
You just got to do it. Okay, so that was October. You've been sober since. How are you maintaining your sobriety? Are you working a program? You mentioned a higher power, which is always great and super helpful. What else are you doing?
So I'm involved in AA and CR, which is Celebrate
Nice.
Recovery. So I'm doing both programs. I do go to NA meetings too, but there's not as many NA meetings as AA meetings. So I just mostly go to AA, even though drinking wasn't my main problem. But if anybody's listening, if you're a drug addict, you can go to AA. I mean, just because it's called Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't mean you have to be an alcoholic. The same principles apply, and no one's going to look at you differently because you're an addict instead of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I just know that there's a lot more AA meetings available than NA meetings. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But and I'm in a step study group with my Celebrate Recovery group that we're going through the steps right now. And there's a few other things. Like I said, I'm really getting interested in religions and spirituality. So I've always been interested in that. But now that I'm actually sober and getting a clear mind again, I can actually practice some of these things that I've been reading about. And just to try something new out, I've been going to an Eastern Orthodox Christian church. And I've also been going to a Thai Theravadan Buddhist temple, practicing some meditation and prayer and stuff. I don't really consider myself a Christian or a Buddhist, but I'm just seeking, right now. I'm like a sponge, just trying to absorb everything and keep an open mind. And if a certain path opens up for me, then I'll be open to that. But
That's great.
I'm very in the meditation and prayer.
That's awesome to hear. You got a lot of really positive, reinforcing, community building, spiritually awakening things that have replaced all those behaviors and all
Oh,
the isolation and all the things that come with long-term addiction. So that's really great to hear, and to check out Celebrate Recovery. Said about AA, I think AA is a great program. I personally, it wasn't probably my cup of tea at the time, but I've gone several times and I've always felt like it was relatable.
I'd say 95% of the people in the AA meetings that I go to also talk about using drugs. Same thing, same steps. It's just,
Different substance.
yeah.
So it sounds like you've maintained straight sobriety since you kicked in Japan. So that's great as well.
For the first time, really for the first time in my life since I was about 15, I'm not taking anything. I'm not doing the marijuana maintenance program. I'm not on any prescriptions or anything. I'm just totally organic, unadulterated Scott.
It's
Yeah.
cool, man. That's cool for the first time in more than half your life. Can I ask you a question? This isn't on our standard list, but I'm curious. So, do you feel like there's something different this time? You've gone, like you said, you've gone to inpatient a bunch of times, and you've gotten sober and relapsed a bunch of times. Do you feel like mentally, like
Yeah.
something's flipped, or
It's strange, but I've done the hard drugs and everything. And really, it was the Kratom that brought me to my knees, and which is kind of weird because people think it's no big deal, really. But it was really the Kratom that brought me to my lowest bottom. And it might not bring you to that low bottom as quickly as other drugs, but once it gets its claws in you, it's it's pretty quick. So I really just had to hit that bottom experience that I talked about, and waking up every morning wanting to change, but finding that you can't, you just don't have the power. And then coming to a crisis point where you just have to cry out to something greater than yourself, and experiencing the the grace of that, I think, is what changed me, because I couldn't do it on my own. I tried for 10
yeah?
years to stop. So
I've never been able to do it on my
I
own
don't know.
either. I think that you'll if you go to enough recovery meetings, if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you're getting sober for the first time or taking it seriously for the first time, there's a common thing that people say in recovery, and that's the opposite of addiction is community. And you can be so isolated in addiction, but when you recover, there's a huge community of people of all different flavors and types. So there's so much now that every individual can pretty much find something that's going to be their cup of tea. in the recovery community?
There's groups like there's Buddhist Dharma recovery, there's Christian Celebrate recovery, there's MA, whatever A.
There's lots of
There's
A's.
everything. And just try things out, even if you're just like not sure or you're uncomfortable or you don't think it's for you. Just try it. Try everything you can because you never know what's going to help you. You might have a certain bias against something or say that's not for me, but if you actually go there and try it out, you might be surprised that it does help you.
Definitely, I agree with that. I was surprised at some of the places that I've gone to or some of the conversations that I've had with people that I never probably thought I would have had something in common with or would have enjoyed that I've really enjoyed. When you're on the other side of addictions, there's lots of good spaces to check out and lots of resources out there.
Really, the hardest part, at least for me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, is just showing up. Like
Yeah,
just making the decision to show up and walking in the room. Like that's usually the hardest part. And once you do that a few times, you realize it's not really that big as a deal. Everybody's just like you in those rooms. Nobody's going to judge you or think you're weird or something. Because I was always a big isolator for many years. I isolate a lot, and just showing up at meetings for me was difficult because I don't know. It's just loneliness is an addict's worst.
it doesn't
So
usually end well when you're isolated and lonely for extended periods of time and years. That can really lead to some dangerous cycles of use. And there's also something you said a little while back about maybe you didn't get to that lowest bottom or whatnot. But I think the other thing that's important to remember is yet. I've talked to so many people now that in all those
yeah,
conversations, it's all kinds. We've talked to people that used Kratom and were entrepreneurs and were super successful and nothing bad happened. They had this crazy trajectory of growth. We've talked to other people that, were taking 12 to 15 kava Kratom drinks a day and drinking on top of it totaled 2 cars. And we've also talked, unfortunately, to some parents who have lost their children because of the rare kratom overdose or kratom toxicity. Not trying to say that's a common outcome, but it can be an outcome. And it's just a matter of consequences, are usually just a matter of yet, even with a substance that can seem somewhat benign like kratom.
I don't know how anybody can take kratom on a regular basis and not be able to do it, but that's just my personal or not get addicted to it.
It's like anything else too. The more you do something, the more your brain is the more you like it and get used to it. So even if for the first year, for example, when I was using it, I was able to use mostly recreationally, and then it went from okay once a week, once every couple of weeks to okay every couple days. Then it's okay now I'm going to binge for a few days, and then I'm going to stop, and then eventually it just you don't
Hmm.
stop, and the binge just keeps going, and before you know it, you find yourself waking up and wondering why you're sick. That's not where
Yeah,
you want to be. All right, maybe one or two more questions and then we can wrap up here. I'd like to ask a personal question or two before we go, something fun maybe. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show that you would recommend anybody watch?
I did watch Louder Milk recently. It's in Seattle. That was a good one. Let's see, favorite movie. I like anything by Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, that kind of thing. One of my favorite movies ever was Taxi
Okay.
Driver with Robert De Niro. There's just something about that movie that it may not be a very positive,
I wouldn't say it's
but
positive.
like the cinematography and the music and everything and the acting is just, I can watch that movie over and over again.
It's
It's
a
great.
classic for lots of reasons. All right. So if someone was to come to you and ask you what your top tip would be if they were getting ready to quit kratom, what would your biggest piece of advice for them be?
I don't know. This is just the way I look at it. I know everybody's different. Everybody has their own way of doing things. But for me, I would just, if you've been using Kratom for maybe under a year, I would go cold turkey just because tapering, in my opinion, can just prolong the inevitable. Get some gabapentin, get some clonidine, don't take it for too long because those can have their own rebound effects after you stop them. But if you take some gabapentin and clonidine for a week to get over the hump, you won't get addicted to those. You'll be fine. So get those and just go cold turkey. Take a couple days off of work. You're stronger than you realize. You can do it. You just have to stick with it no matter what. Don't convince yourself that you can have just one to take the edge off. Just stick with it. And if you need, tell somebody what you're going through and help them hold you accountable. If you're prone to relapsing like me, you can give your car keys to somebody like your best friend, give your wallet to your best friend and just stay home for the weekend. For me, I was using every day for 10 years and the worst of the withdrawals was over after 3 days. I was able to function pretty well after that. So just give it a few days. You might feel like you're dying, but you're not. You can do it. You'll survive.
That's
Yeah.
great advice. I think there's a lot of great things in there. You're not going to feel great, but you'll get through it. And it's much better once you get on the other side of it, that's for sure.
I just think if you're anything like me, it's got to be all or nothing. If I allowed myself to taper, I would still be going up and down with my taper. I just had to put an end to it. And once you reach the other side, your mind is going to make it out to be worse than it really is. That's the bottom line. Our minds will exaggerate and tell us we can't do it. It's too hard. You're not strong enough. But you are. And if you use prayer and meditation and come up with your concept of a higher power, that will make you even stronger because then you're not doing it all on your own strength. You can have your higher power help you. So I'm not going to try and preach too much, but that's just that's what helped me. That's the only thing that helped me was prayer and meditation. That's my story.
There you go. All right, Scott, I really want to thank you for taking some time to share your story. Before we wrap, is there an answer to a question that maybe I didn't ask you that you want to share with the audience or anything else you wanted to share?
I did want to say that thank you for doing the podcast because I remember like last year when I was really hitting the end of my, bottom experience and I was trying to get inspiration to quit. I would listen to this podcast and it would give me a lot of hope.
Oh,
So,
thank you. I'm glad that
uh,
it was helpful in getting you on your road
yeah,
to ultimately getting off the stuff.
yeah. So just, it works, man. Thanks for doing the podcast and thanks for
Yeah,
having
you're
me.
welcome. Thanks again for coming on. I'm sure this will be super helpful to others that were in a similar spot that you were back before you quit last October. But thanks again and have a good evening, man.
All right, you too. Thank you.